G'day everyone, and welcome once again to this week's Property News in Review. It's been a week of spin doctors and fake news. And let's start with the first one being Liverpool's position as Sydney's third largest CBD is a step closer to what? A step closer to a residential hub full of mixed-use development with abandoned shops like you saw in Newcastle, which we're also about to see of what I witnessed down in Melbourne and any other so-called city hub that these pundits and property spookers keep on dishing out. I don't know. Let's see what happens to Liverpool in the next 2 to 3 years. And moving on, today we're going to talk about Melbourne. We did an expose of some of the high-rise construction down there. Met up with the gangster and Amy, and we had a great time looking around, jumping fences, not really, inside view of these apartments, and as well as some of the construction that's going on in the city centre, as well as Docklands. Today we're also going to talk about Mould, the silent killer, which I've been talking about for the last 10 or so years, and I've been trying to expose to the mainstream and get the mainstream to discuss this and put more emphasis on this topic, as it is a silent killer, and I believe it's one just as bad as asbestos has been in the past. Something that's now come to light with a case going to the High Court of the ACT that is going to be heard shortly with regards to a builder and a resident of one of the towers down there that has faced issues with mould. We're going to discuss that and open that up a little bit more later on. We're also going to talk about some fake data and some of the interesting numbers and figures that have been coming out during the week. And as I've always been saying, it's interesting how the mainstream are interpreting the fake data in comparison to real data. And last but not least, we're also going to look at mixed-use development, the failure of mixed-use development throughout all cities and all states and regions for that matter, why it has failed. So sit tight, pour yourselves a tequila, grab the nachos or popcorn, and let's move along. First and foremost, guys, before we tear into the high-rise development and construction in and around the Melbourne CBD, let me say one thing, and that is the people down there are absolutely awesome. We met some very courteous and generous people down there, from real estate agents to coffee shop owners and restaurateurs, except one, and that is Cranides. So outside of Cranides, the rest of you guys are absolutely awesome. So moving on, like every other residential build-up area that I've seen around in different states, in different parts of Australia, Melbourne just wasn't any different. What I did witness was, in terms of these developments, it just seemed like it was one high-rise on top of another high-rise on top of another high-rise, blocking the original property that was there, probably built 15, 20 years ago, that would have been, anywhere between 9 and 15 levels, being overbuilt by towers that are now 21, 30 levels, and not only having the views obstructed, but also now having the sunlight obstructed, which obviously has other issues and ramifications that come with it, such as cold, dampness, and mould, which is one of the main topics that we're going to be discussing today. The construction, pretty much the same across Sydney, although I did find that the apartments that we did go into were somewhat smaller than the ones that you would find in Sydney, in the CBD of Sydney, as well as Parramatta or any other major hubs. I found these apartments to be small. There was a lot of drop ceilings type of construction with a lot of cavities, a lot of accommodating, a lot of internal piping or exposed piping that was covered up by drop ceilings. Now, again, the issue with this is that over the years, what you find is that these cavities or these drop ceilings in between the floors, these cavities become a nesting ground for mould. Because why? We don't have adequate mechanical ventilation. We don't have cross-flow ventilation, natural cross-flow ventilation to take that moisture away from the unit itself. The units being so small, and people are cooking, boiling water, doing the laundry, having showers, air conditioning, gas heaters and the like, all in a very confined space with no natural ventilation other than the mechanical ventilation, which although is compliant, isn't adequate to take care of the extraction of the moisture in the particular unit. So what I can see is going to happen in the future is that we're going to get a lot of these high-rise developments, not only in Melbourne, but throughout Australia, that are going to have major issues with mould. And that's if there isn't any other form of water penetration through bad construction methods with regard to waterproofing, bad waterproofing membranes and the like. Again, I say that to me, it appeared in most cases, in most areas that I visited, it was ad hoc construction, one after the other. One of the things that caught my attention was on the Sunday, walking around the streets of downtown Melbourne, I saw a lot of people working. I could only imagine that they're rushing to finish these projects in order to try and beat the bust. I don't know. More than likely, that's the reason. But there was a lot of construction happening on the Sunday, something that I haven't seen for years. The quality of fixtures and fittings in some of these apartments are typical of anything else that I've seen. Low quality when you compare it to the prices that are being paid. In some cases, some of the agents were telling us that apartments that were being sold off the plan for $900 had come down to $750 in terms of value. That was absolutely, to the locals, was staggering, but as I've said all along, people that bought off the plan 2-3 years ago, they paid immense prices in comparison to what they should have been paying. But when you take into consideration the 10% commissions that were paid to the marketing companies, well, go figure. That's what you get at the end. The rental yields, we were also advised that they had come down somewhat from some cases from $750 right down to $620 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment with all the bells and whistles. But then again, even if they were getting $700 or $750 for $1 million apartment, in the CBD, it's not a very good return when you do the math. And the question that always comes to mind is, why bother when you're getting less than a 2% yield? And then you've got to account for high strata costs. You've got pools in the buildings, not only one pool, but you've got multiple pools. You've got gyms, outdoor entertainment areas, lifts, and of course there's your 24/7 mechanical ventilation for the basement car parking, as well as the water pumps to extract all the water out of all the seepage out of the basements. So all these added costs, which will diminish your return. As we're walking through an area called Docklands, there I was fascinated by what we saw in relation to the mixed-use development, something that again we're going to be touching a little bit more on later on in the show. A place where things should have been buzzing, and it's your Darling Harbour of Melbourne, the equivalent of our Darling Harbour down in Melbourne. It was abandoned. The shops and the restaurants, coffee shops that were open, you had a handful of people, if anything. You can imagine the amount of rent that they would be paying, and all relying on the residential towers above the shops for the patronage. Well, guess what, folks? Most of these towers, 60-70% vacant. There have been a lot of reports with regard to the vacancy scenarios around the Docklands area and these high-rise developments, not only in Melbourne but also in Sydney, and no doubt we're going to find the same scenarios in Queensland when we head out there to Brisbane and the Gold Coast. So overall, Melbourne, you're a great place to visit, but quite frankly, I think that the shock to your high-rise development is going to be felt a lot harder than the shock that we're going to be feeling and that we will continue to feel here in Sydney. One of the main things that I did get to discuss with Amy and the gangster Robbie Barwick from CEC was in relation to mould. And it so happens that this week there's a story out that Geocon is being sued after allegedly mouldy units made owners sick. The Canberra Times report that a woman is suing Canberra construction giant Geocon, alleging her unit was so defective and full of mold that it made her sick. I've been talking about these issues for approximately 10 years, if not more. I released a video about 6-7 years ago with regards to the effects of mold and what it does, how it penetrates not only the area where the moisture is coming through or the moisture is contained, predominantly the bathrooms or where the plumbing works from in the bulkhead from the units above, come down onto the unit below, and they are exposed to, or the moisture that's contained in those areas sooner than later breaks out, and then you get these mold spores that just spread throughout the whole unit. So now we have a resident in a development in Canberra that is suing the builder with regard to health issues that she alleges that she has incurred, and all due to mold. Let me put this out as a warning to all the property managers out there, all the property owners out there, particularly when the apartment that you own and that you're leasing out has gone beyond the statutory warranty that the builder has over the building. If you're not disclosing the material fact with regard to mold issues, if you're not attending to any concerns or to any complaints in relation to mold immediately after it has been noted down by a resident of the apartment that you have, you will be in serious trouble. Pay very close attention to this court case. Take note, because this will set the precedent for future claims against property managers, apartment owners, builders, developers, and tradespeople, not only in high-rise, but across the board when it comes to mold. I know in America, if mold is found in a dwelling, in a property that's been rented out, the occupants are evacuated immediately. That's how seriously they take it. But we seem to not care. But I'll tell you what, we're about to care once the penny drops and once these penalties are issued. I, for one, believe that this applicant is going to win in the court case. I'm confident that she'll get up in this matter, and this will be the precedent that will be set for thousands of people that will be lining up to make similar claims. So, friends, followers, subscribers, if you've got apartments, if you've got rental properties, make sure that your property management team always disclose material fact, particularly when it comes to mold, and make sure you get that treated immediately. Well, chicos locos, when mixed-use development was passed in, when local councils, the state government ticked all the boxes, I tell you what, they must have been really high on the tequila or anything else stronger than tequila, as far as I'm concerned. We are now feeling the effects of this bad judgment that has been made by local councils and the state government with regard to mixed-use development. It doesn't work, not here in Australia, and I don't think it's going to work in the future either. The concept was fine, the idea was okay, but you know what? When local councils remove or sell out local parking stations to developers, well, then you've got a problem. Well, then you've defeated the whole purpose of mixed-use development, because the patronage for the mixed-use area or for the commercial space would have parked in the local council areas and would have walked around to go to the coffee shop or go to the boutique store or go to the $2 shop or go to whatever was set up in there. But after passing these regulations, then the councils go out and start removing parking areas, parking facilities, charging exorbitant prices for street parking. So what do you expect? All they could rely on is the residential apartments above the commercial space. And as you know, and as we know, most of the time, these blocks are mainly empty or running at 50, 60, 70% capacity at best. most of the time they don't want to come down. And the other thing is that how many coffee shops can you really go to? Mixed use development just hasn't worked. It's not going to work, and it will continue to be a blight on the development planning for the local governments and state governments moving forward. Well, muchachos, I just couldn't help myself this morning. I think I just had one too many cups of coffee, and I think one might have had a little bit of tequila thrown in from last night. But when I saw the post or the numbers put out by CoreLogic in relation to auction clearance rates for the weekend, I just couldn't help myself. Look at Tasmania's numbers. They had one auction in Tasmania, 0 reported. Did CoreLogic run out of telemarketers or people to call the agent to see if it was sold or not sold? Or was it that the agent didn't want to disclose the fact that he or she didn't sell the property? I don't know. I'm not saying anything other than the fact that it is ridiculous. That goes right across the board, as I've been saying all along. Fake data is miles apart from real data. But when you really look at actual numbers, if you really want to make sense of what's happening out there in the marketplace, we have very low stock on the market, just running over 17,000 listings from what we've been tracking earlier on, from 22,000. Now we're about 17,000, and it's holding just above 17,000. Still waiting for the spring season to kick in before we get a rising numbers. We've got so-called a lot of people wanting to buying and going over reserve, going nuts at auctions, allegedly. And yet, across the board, we've got very, very lower figures than last year when it comes to actual sales on the day or for the week. So once again, when you look at these auction clearance rates, pay close attention to the actual numbers that are being sold, given the fact that, as we've said all along, the government throwing the kitchen sink, is about to sacrifice the firstborn, and God only knows what else they're going to throw into this in order to keep this property bubble up. Yet we've got low sales volumes across the board. One of the things that Martin North has brought out this week is the rise in numbers with regard to negative equity. And the other one is household finance confidence has declined in the last month as well. That's what's happening out there. Sporty and myself, we've been talking about the construction numbers or construction jobs getting up to and close on to 200,000 jobs that will be lost by the end of this year. The mainstream media are now talking 100 to 150,000, and Sporty in particular has been calling the 200,000 figure for over 12 months now. Why are we calling this? Why have we called this? It's because we deal and we communicate on a week-by-week basis with construction companies that predominantly work in the space or develop house and land packages. And that's where the pain has been felt and is being felt across, we believe, not only New South Wales, but across all states. Watch this space as the construction unemployment numbers increase, and they will increase steadily over the next 6 months. And with retail on top of that, and hospitality as well feeling the pinch, there's a lot of uncertainty up ahead. And other than fighting the establishment, uppercut, Obi-Wan, let's keep on putting the word out there and coming against fake news. For all you followers and viewers, keep on sending us the footage of what you're seeing out there. Let's keep on working and combating the fake news that's out there and letting people know what really is happening and how they could best protect themselves, particularly when they're looking at buying into any strata lot or any high-rise development. All the best. Enjoy life. Until next time.